this particular topic is unbelievably important relative to training, whether it's yourself or an associate doctor, in how to increase your patient education. So remember, the very first thing starts with conviction. Conviction, your belief system in what you're essentially educating and selling. So the first part, when I work with doctors and train them, is that I'll start with where they're naturally at. What are your natural belief systems? So to increase patient retention, you're looking at three separate categories. One is your conviction. Okay, that's one category. The next category that you want to pay attention to is patient visits. That's the second category. The third category is money. And doctors get this backwards all the time, that a lot of people can't do prepays or they're afraid to do prepays. And by the way, you pretty much need to do prepays to stop patients from pretty much just backing out of care after they feel a little better. You can pretty much guarantee that you're going to lose a lot of patients. And if you don't, it's a tremendous headache to regularly try to collect money, and you're regularly increasing the obstacles of money as the perceived need goes down. So there's no upside. There's no upside of not doing prepays. It's all down. It's all negative. Now, when I say prepays, I'm talking about prepays in the mind of the patient. So I am not just referring to that they pay all the money up front. That is not what I'm talking about. Again, when I say prepays, I'm talking about when the patient actually mentally commits. So prepays also includes that the person accepts a certain treatment plan for a certain amount of money, even if the money is paid over time with terms. That's a prepay, and the reason, it has to do with the mindset of the patient. When we accept things and sign off on them, we move forward. In other words, we have a shift in our belief system, and we agree, and the obstacles are low. So unless something really unusual happens, that the time and money issue is over relative to the value, the perceived need. And so in the mind of the patient, even though they didn't pay up front, but they agreed for a discount to sign off on periodic payments, they have mentally agreed to the obstacles of time or money relative to the perceived need or the value. And it's over. They just move on. So unlike if you don't get a prepay, then every day you're fighting the obstacles of need relative to time versus money. And it's going to be an inverse relationship. The patient's going to get better, but yet you're still going to maintain the obstacle of money and time. And so the equation of need versus time versus money starts working against you. And that's why you'll just start losing patients. The patient just goes right back to their idea of when they're better, which is when they feel better. So the very first category you want to work on with patient retention is conviction. What is your belief system and what is it based on? And obviously, we promote that the therapeutic protocol should be based on the three phases of healing. It's pure science. It cannot be contested. You'll never have in court, you'll never have another doctor come up and go, no, that's not right. That'll never happen. And if it does happen and you're in court and you have a defense doctor to come up and do that, that's like the best thing that could happen to you, because he's going to look really stupid. We're going to make him look really silly. But it'll never happen. So that's what it's based on because of the science. And then what you want to do, and so the first thing that I do with the doctors is I start educating them on the three phases of healing to increase their conviction. And then along with that, then I'll add in what therapeutic protocol should the patient get based on their biomarkers. So I'll go, okay, well, what were the findings of the patient? You know, was there inflammation? Was there pain? Was there muscle restrictions? Was there restricted range of motion? What were your biomarkers? And that's what determines your therapeutic protocol relative to which phase of healing you're in. So that's what I'll teach, and I'll regularly work with the doctor. I mean, every day. You can't just say, read this, and then immediately, automatically they have high conviction. It doesn't work that way. It has to be regular reinforcement is what has to happen. So the first thing that I do is I go into, that's what our care is based on. Okay. So it's a very solid foundation. And then the therapies we use, we explain what they do physiologically and why they help with certain biomarkers. And that's why we apply them. Okay. So that means if you don't have those biomarkers, you don't need to be doing that therapy. That's also what it means. So that's number one. Now, also in the training process, what is so important is to protect the person's confidence. Your confidence is your most valuable asset, or to get your confidence back. And something that I see all the time with patient education and retention with chiropractors is, they're kind of, especially associate doctors, they're pushed into from the head doctor to immediately going to where the head doctor's mind space is. And the head doctor forgets how much uncertainty they had when they came out of school with, therapeutic protocols and patient and all this. So, the head doctors immediately are saying, well, recommend this and at this amount of money. Well, the associate doctor will typically do it short term, not because they believe it, it's because they don't want to get fired. But that kind of relationship never works out because the doctor eventually doesn't feel good about himself. In other words, he doesn't have a belief system. And the head doctor doesn't realize that he never stair-stepped that person. And by the way, I'm using third-party head doctor, associate doctors, but this is exactly how you need to look at yourself, how you need to consider training yourself. So the first and most important part of patient retention is your conviction. So if you got lower, if you're a little afraid clinically on what, you should prescribe, you really need to study the three phases of healing and what happens physiologically in each phase, how long the phases occur, and then what therapies are you using to help mitigate those negative physiological responses. That's the very first place you go to increase conviction, and then totally leave out money. Don't even think about money or time. You just think of it from a pure clinical standpoint. Now, that's not real because we live in the real world and money and time is always an issue. But that's the first place that I'm going to take the associate doctor. I said, let's totally leave out money. Let's totally leave out time. Let's just go to what is best for the patient. Let's go for the science and what's best for the patient based on their tests relative to what we know about the three phases of healing. So that's how we'll justify, and then we'll keep doing that. And like I said, every day, I would always take a case example. When I was training associate doctors, every day I would take one of their, the new patient of the day or a patient of the day. And it may have been a new patient, it may be a re-exam from a patient. And I would go over their biomarkers. And then I'd go, okay, what phase of healing are they in and why? And then so based on their biomarkers, I go, what kind of therapy should they be getting and at what frequency and why? And so that's what I did every day to my associate doctors to get them to see not only what should be done, but also when they don't recommend the proper care because they're being inhibited by time or money or lack of knowledge of conviction, that they're actually hurting the patient. And it's no different than just, prescribing the patient ibuprofen or Motrin. If you're just going to treat them for the inflammatory phase and just a little bit of the repair phase, you might as well just give them Motrin because that's the same thing that's happening as far as the physiology for the most part. So that's the pleasure, pain, benefit, and the reinforcement from the conviction standpoint.